So believe it or not, this street here, Sussex Gardens in central London, just off of the Edgware Road, was one of the hubs, the main epicentre in which the children were pimped out. They were taken to this street in the early hours of the morning and they were concealed in some of these bushes along here. They would be hidden in there. The police would do vice patrols and their main target were the street prostitutes, which would regularly walk up and down here picking up clients. This area is full of hotels. And years ago these were cheap budget hotels which used to house a lot of the building workers that would come to London from other parts of the country and Europe. And these hotels would rent out their rooms by the hour to certain prostitutes who would then entertain their clients. But one particular prostitute was using it in order to take young children to be basically raped for profit by older men. These kids their ages ranged from 9 to 14 years old. And when the police would come along, as we used to in our undercover vice vehicles, they would recognise us and that the kids would be hidden in these bushes until the police had gone by, and then they'd be brought out again and put on display. And it was really here that I'd had a rude awakening into the underbelly that goes on in London society. Now these children are literally being sold on the streets under the noses of everyone who walks by, and nothing was ever done about it. And I uncovered a deliberate attempt to subdue any information that was coming forward in revealing this horrific crime. And in doing so, I was monumentally punished and threatened by a senior serving Metropolitan Police officer with the loss of my home, my children and my job if I ever spoke out. I did speak out and I endured a horrific 4-year campaign of bullying that went to the heart of the British establishment in order to silence me. Because the client list for some of these children, they ranged from court judges to people in the entertainment industry to wealthy restaurateurs and to serving senior police officers. And this information could have been politically very damaging to the UK. And it was whilst working as a whistleblower that I started interviewing, using my policing skills to interview victims and survivors of historic and institutional child abuse. And a common strand kept coming out from the testimonies I was taking from these people, but that most of them went on, after being abused, to live quite dysfunctional lives which harboured anger, aggression, addictions, and many went on to lives of crime. And the root cause was dysfunctionality and abuse in their childhood. And all these people wanted was justice. And so what I started to do was go around the UK interviewing people, taking their testimonies, and this series of interviews, they are for people who have ended up in the system, whether they've ended up in prison, they've ended up in drug addiction, they've ended up in violent crime, or ex-soldiers that live very violent lives. And the system couldn't change them. Counselling couldn't change them. Even medication couldn't change them. But one thing did change them, and that was Jesus Christ. These are a series of interviews of people that have gone through a process known as redemption, in which they've searched into the very heart of themselves, very painful memories, having to take ownership of some crimes that they've committed themselves, pain they've caused to other people as a result of the pain they were harbouring deep inside, and ask God for forgiveness, and more importantly to forgive themselves. And in doing so they come to terms with not only the abuse they suffered, but having forgiveness, and it's a painful thing to do, having forgiveness for those that abuse them. and in doing so they released the shackles that kept them tied in to a life of dysfunctionality, anger and crime. And I hope you enjoy this series, and it's all about redemption and these people how they've gone on to turn their lives around and help others to do likewise. God bless.
Right. Let me just throw in another question, John.
Yeah.
Just changing the frame. Why do you think it's important to make a film like this?
One of the sad statistics that comes out of abuse is suicide. And suicide usually comes after years of depression. And people that have been hurt in their childhood have a greater propensity to suffer from depression. And if they don't get help for that depression, then it can well lead to suicide. And once suicidal tendencies kick in, it can be difficult to turn that person around. They get fixated on it. And that's a life lost, that's a soul taken away. So it's important to put this message out that no matter how bad things are, Jesus loves you and there is another way out. Suicide should never be an option. And it is a message really of hope, and that there is happiness after abuse, and there is a way out, and that is Jesus.